Guess who's going to Brazil for the Latin America International Championships? It's everyone's favorite heroic hermit crab, Crustle. Alright, I know, this is like the third time I've shown off Crustle to the class. And I'll say it right now, there is absolutely no chance that I am going to be playing a fully Crustle-centric walling deck. I just don't think it stands a chance in the current meta. However, this little guy is 100% getting packed in my suitcase, because I am heavily considering including Crustle in a few different decks. Let me explain. We all know the deck kind of flops when your only game plan is being a wall and just hoping that you hit the right matchups. But what if instead of dedicating all 60 cards towards enabling the crab, we actually condensed it down and treated it as a tight package strictly designed to counter a few specific susceptible decks? And I'm not talking about something like Zoroark Crustle. That's more of a 50-50 split focused on patching up Crustle's weaknesses. What I'm cooking up is going to solve the meta with as little as 4 cards. But before I get into all the fun details of this beautiful tech, which matchups is this combo actually targeting and which decks are really going to get the most value out of it? While it can absolutely come up in other situations, I think the two most relevant problems the package solves are Goldingo and, although less popular and less successful, Ceruledge as well. And if we take a look at Goldingo's matchup data from Gdansk, you'll see two very relevant dark decks that it completely dominates: Mega Absol and Zoroark. Oh, and if you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see just how well Goldingo fares into the Crustle matchup. But yeah, this is all about solving Goldingo and, to a lesser extent, Ceruledge. These can be incredibly obnoxious roadblocks for any dark deck enthusiasts. While they're striving for slower, borderline control game plans that often rely on tanking a hit or two and then healing it up or reversing the damage, these aggressive stage 1 decks can regularly reach one-hit KOs on even the beefiest of Mega Pokemon. In fact, both of these dark decks are already committing a handful of spaces to just keep their head above water in these matchups. Previously, Cornerstone Ogerpon was a solid solution for Goldingo, but now many of them are choosing to run dedicated counters to this, such as Mega Lucario EX and more recently Mega Mawile EX, which turns out to just be a great option for checkmating games anyway. So I don't think it's leaving the 60 anytime soon. As a response to this, Zoroark lists are now resorting to things like Toedscruel, as we saw in Aiden Koos's Milwaukee list, or Darmanitan, which Piper played in both Lille and Gdansk, whereas the Mega Absol players are beginning to lean on tech supporters like Eerie and Zerostic's Machinations. These are fine solutions and definitely have a lot more niche applications in other matchups when compared to Crustle, but they are nowhere near airtight when it comes to the biggest problems they need to solve. So now that I've set up the issues that it's actually going to fix, let's finally talk about Crustle. I think the stars have aligned for it to be in a really strong position at the moment. Like I mentioned before, Goldingo is very much focused on dealing with Cornerstone Ogerpon using one of its tech spaces for Mega Mawile. Plus, they've already got to run double Professor Turo scenario for retreat locking, Lana's aid for Jellicent EX, and sometimes even a Super Rod for Toedscruel. There is absolutely no space left to answer Crustle, and with no more striker-rich Goldingos floating around in any lists, all they have to work with is Solrock's 70 damage Cosmic Beam. Swinging for 70 isn't a lot, but when we aren't running a dedicated deck and Crustle takes a bit longer to actually come online, this chip damage can really add up. So that's why Crustle needs a tool, and personally, I think Rigid Band is the way to go. Traditionally, the crab would don a luxurious cape for an additional 100 bonus HP. This is great when the goal was to survive a variety of different attacks, but when we are specifically focused on dealing with exclusively Solrock, I think damage reduction is absolutely the way to go. As soon as you've tanked 4 or more hits, that'll already be more value than the cape would have ever provided. It's time to break down the maths. Let's say you promote a Dwebble, throw on an energy, and immediately use Ascension to evolve into Crustle, with a Rigid Band attached for good measure. If they want to deal with Crustle as soon as possible, the best they can do is immediately swing in with Solrock, making use of their own Vitality Band and standard single copy of Premium Power Pro. That'll be 80 damage. I'm going to assume that we already have at least a single Munkidori in play, since both Zoroark and Mega Absol play multiple copies and it's vital to the strategy. I should also mention that when going for this game plan, you need to make sure that you don't have too many other Pokemon bench such that they can just ignore Crustle and win with enough boss's orders. But you can always remove some of those liabilities with either Penny or Professor Turo scenario. Anyway, after they swing in, we can use use Monkey Dory to heal 30 damage and attach a second energy to Crustle. At this point, the crab's now got 100 HP remaining. Also, you shouldn't need to worry about them bouncing that 30 damage back with their own Monkey Dory. That's basically never an inclusion in any of these Golden Go Rocks decks. They can attack once again while they still have access to Vitality Band, dealing another 50 damage. But after that, we can finally attach a third energy and KO the buffed up Solrock. Throw in another Monkey Dory heal so that we have 80 HP remaining, and now without Vitality Band, they'll only be able to deal 40 damage at a time for the rest of the game. Functionally 10 after you consider the 30 we're healing with Adrenabrain. And that's if they're able to keep chaining Solrock attacks. For example, Christian Fontenot's 4th place list ran both Lana's Aid and Superrod, which can absolutely enable this. But I still don't think this is enough damage to get through the wall, especially when you factor in the possibility of having 2 Monkey Dories healing you each turn. And a more standard list like Daniel Magda's 1st place 60 is never able to set up more than 3 Solrocks throughout a game. Okay, but what if our opponent chases down the monkeys and we aren't able to heal with Adrenabrain? You know, bossing them up each turn and eventually setting up a position where they've taken enough prizes and we can't have any more in play without risking losing the game to another gusting effect. Well, it just so happens that Mega Absol and Zoroark both have perfect built-in answers. If they do take this line, not only will it provide us with much more time to establish Crustle since it won't be taking damage while we hand attach each turn, but there is still a way for us to utilize Adrenabrain without leaving Monkey Dory in play. Both of those dark decks run multiple copies of Penny and Professor Turo's scenario. Either of these cards can allow us to bench Monkey Dory, attach an energy, utilize Adrenabrain, and then remove it from play, denying the free prize. It's also worth noting that while Monkey Dory is already in play, these supporters can be used to refresh its ability and double dip on the healing without benching a second monkey. So yeah, it's relatively simple, but I think these decks are the perfect home for this package, and it really does solve arguably their biggest obstacle in the current meta. Now, I'm not set on the counts yet. Obviously, a 1-1 Crustle line with 1 Grass Energy and 1 Rigid Band, while technically being all you need, is definitely susceptible to pricing issues. I don't want to end up creating another full-on Crustle deck, but I'm thinking a 2-2 Crustle line with a Rigid Band, Grass Energy, and Luminous Energy and Mega Absol, since we're running Earthen Vessel to search out that basic Grass Energy, or in Zoroark, just replace it with 2 Luminous Energy, since we don't have Vessel, but we can still play Hilda to tutor out the energy regardless. This would probably be a bit more reasonable than the minimalist 4-card package. You can also consider Defiance Vest over Rigid Band, particularly for Mega Absol, since unlike Zoroark, it can't get any other value out of the card. But it does open up some more potential counterplay on your opponent's side. And if either deck is already running Hero's Cape for their A-Spec, that further complements the strategy, giving a second alternative tanking tool, which, while not as optimal for this specific scenario, is still really powerful. The last thing I want to mention is substituting out the Crab and running a similar concept but with Mimikyu. While it isn't quite as tanky, it is much easier to set up and requires less deck space. Plus, its attack costs 1 less energy, and basic Psychic Energy is a bit more relevant to have in the deck. At least Monkey Dory and Latias can make use of it, and you can even swap out the Luminous for Prism Energy and Mega Absol, which again is much better. However, there are of course 2 main issues. The first is that you can't actually one-shot Solrock in return. If you happen to have double Monkey Dory in play, it will work, but it requires a little more support and doesn't exactly function as a standalone wall. The second is that even with an active Defiance Vest, 110 functional HP just isn't enough to survive a Premium Power Pro Vitality Band boosted Cosmic Beam. You'll instead need to be running Bravery Charm, Hero's Cape, or Luxurious Cape. Unfortunately, this makes tanking back-to-back hits without multiple monkeys in play very difficult. But in exchange, you do gain the added option to scoop it up with Penny for a reliable full heal. Personally, I think Crustle is much better for the strategy overall. However, with a slightly different twist, I'm sure that Mimikyu could work as well. And by the way, as soon as that new Jumbo Ice Cream comes out in Phantasmal Flames, this combo is going to become ridiculous. Anyway, that's all I wanted to yap about for now. I'm filming this before I leave for Vegas, but I want to wait until the week of LAIC, just in case I have any more thoughts on the combo or if anything seriously changes in the meta after Vegas. And I'll probably be releasing it a couple days early for all of my wonderful channel members. So if you are watching this early, thanks for all the support. I really appreciate it. And if you aren't, maybe consider becoming a channel member or supporting me over on Patreon or Metafy. There are a whole bunch of benefits. Cheers, fellas.